But the Mormons have been saying it for a long time. That is exactly what the transhumanists would like to take upon themselves as their logo, their motto. But if they were so blatant to say it that out in the open, this early in their infancy as a movement, as a ism, pretty sure they'd be ran right out of the building. But they already did run a presidential candidate, so they're probably not going anywhere. If you haven't heard of transhumanism, you might want to look at some of my descriptions and start educating yourself. As I've said, those descriptions to my videos are all jam-packed with links to everything I can think of that goes with the subject at hand in that video, or just an overall quackery 101. Gotta catch up on your quackery. We all do. Because there is an artificial life form that it's an invasive species that has infiltrated this earth, and it's spreading its fiber optic tentacles everywhere. Right now, the future of organic life on this planet is at stake. That is the consequences. That's what's at stake. This one's for all the marbles, all the whatevers. That's not an overstatement or an exaggeration or inflating it for woo-woo or anything like that. That just really is what's at hand here. See, I think that's why a lot of people probably have trouble believing. Hold on, I'm pulling over so someone can go around. In a lot of what I'm saying, you don't got a microchip in your head. You'd be more freaked out than you are. This could all be as the magnitude of which you say, or you wouldn't be the guy bringing it to me. This would be all over the evening news and everywhere on the news. You look at those solar portal images that I got, and there's a reason they took that video down, because it could have gone viral and caused mass panic with a quickness. Both the transmitters want everyone to know real quick, but not too quick. They both want to control the dispensation of the knowledge. And I would say at this point, I don't want to get confused. It used to be one side convinced the world it didn't exist, and it didn't want the world to think God transmission existed either. But now, this transmission broadcast wants everyone to know it exists. God transmission always wanted everyone to know that it's here trying to influence you. It's the still small voice within, and there's a bunch of other still small voices within too. And those aren't all your own thoughts and impulses. It was always trying to tell you the truth of it being here and the other thing being here. The other thing was trying to conceal itself and say that that God is just a delusion in your mind. Well, now both sides are coming out of the shadow. The one side that's always been doing everything by stealth, baby steps, is throwing off the cloak, making a run for the end deadline. There's a deadline and it's running for the end zone. And it doesn't care who knows what. It used to be baby steps, problem, reaction, solution, zigzag, so they don't know exactly which direction you're going. They don't care who knows what anymore. There's a deadline and they are running for the finish line. So like I've said, this is a spiritual arms race. And the clock is ticking, and it's ticking faster every day. And I think a lot of people really are receiving the broadcast, the transmissions. I never considered myself religious. I still don't know if I even consider myself a Christian. Maybe a neo-Nazarene Christ supremacist. I've explained why. I'll explain more about that in the future. Bottom line is there is a synthetic life form or a reptilian and or both. The overall view is the reptilians worship an AI god. There's an AI god above them. The Greys, the androids, the alien Greys, are a biological android, basically a slave race, that the reptilians send to do their dirty work down here on Earth. Because there is a time bounce, just like in the movie Interstellar. They send the cyborg TARS, their buddy, through the time bounce because you age quicker when he's in the bookcase. He's this small, and he is aging 16 times quicker than his larger self on the other side. The reason they send androids through the time bounce, because if you're biological, whether you age faster or slower than your peers, it's a real bitch when you get back home and everyone's either older or younger than you, that you knew. So you send biological androids or mechanics and the radio broadcast frequency to give impulses to the biobots. Whether that time bounce is the magnetic field that's getting so thin, we should prepare for a lot of transit. And no longer just sending the broadcast and the cyborgs, but the organic life forms themselves. And it may not be so easy as to just choose to not go with the guy with the flaming pitchfork and the horns and the red tail. Maybe the choice is going to be between which reptilian alliance you decide to join. Or just decide not to join. Making that choice is pretty much the choice everyone's going to make. And that's already calculated, baked right in. It's a remnant that we're looking to collect here. Not everyone. This ain't for everyone. There's tales of Adam being bronze and scaly. Early Christian accounts depict him as such. Enki, and Enlil are the early depictions of Jesus and Satan. Enki was the good serpent. He was the one that went out in the garden, interacted with the people. Enlil was the one in the upper management office who treated the humans like cattle. Didn't care about them. Enki was the serpent in the garden who gave the humans the DNA upgrade / bite of the apple. And that is what the Apple computer logo represents. The missing bite of the apple is this AI god that's above the reptilians, the serpent in the garden that gave the bite of the apple, which is the technology that is the invasive species, I'm telling you, is here now. And whether or not it was a blessing or a curse is up for debate. The Mormons happen to think it was a blessing. That's right, the bite of the apple in the garden. The Mormons think the fall of man wasn't a curse at all. There was more of, like the Promethean fire, to make the synapses fire enough that you can use this technology and develop it was a DNA upgrade and or the ability to use tools, use and develop tools and weapons. So that by the time we get back, Enki and Enlil, by the time they get back here, us humans might stand a chance to defend ourselves. And that might be what all these directed energy weapons are about. They're firing them up, threatening to split this planet right in half rather than be collared as a slave race like the alien Greys. Turned into cyborgs, androids. One thing that they're looking to extract, and this is a process that just keeps going on and on, the snake eating its tail. God is growing consciousnesses. He's cultivating them. And he's going to come harvest them. But then this synthetic life form wants to know how to program its biobots with all this human-like stuff. It knows somehow it's got to be able to program the human spirit, these emotions. Fear of God, particularly, they'd like to program fear of God into their bots. Humans are a technology. There's a reason our brain is spaghetti in a spaghetti bowl rather than all laid out in rows and columns, because if it was all laid out in rows and columns, we would already be hacked. Just like the drone that supposedly went over and Obama didn't give it to him as a present. No, they hacked our drone in Iran and safely landed it in their country in order to pick it up and be able to try to reverse engineer it. Hacking the drone is one task, reverse engineering it is a second task. Much harder to reverse engineer it than just to hack it. The hacking of the drones is the transmission we are receiving from any and all of these other transmissions, unless you're a willing recipient of the God transmission. That is hacking the biobots, taking over the command and control. Reproducing or reverse engineering the technology is a much larger task. And the way, because in the universe at large there is no patents, there is no intellectual property rights, you have to prevent whoever comes along and picks up one of your drones from being able to easily reproduce it. And that is why our organic brain is like spaghetti, and they can't just pull it out and reproduce it in rows and columns and hack it. So the God that grew the consciousnesses, that planted the seeds, the farmer of these humans, there's also scavengers, bandits that come along and want to hack the drones, figure out how to take this technology of emotions like fear of God and program it into their bots. It's just like, how do you find the cure to AIDS? You infect 10 million people with AIDS, and then the ones that are affected not at all, and the ones that are affected the most, you study them. That shows you how it works, and what was the difference about the people that it didn't work on. Study the immune system of the people that seem to have a resistance or a tolerance and were unaffected by it, and you study the people that were the most affected by it. Why were they so seemingly affected? Then you find the cause, how it works, and the cure, what defenses against it. But you got to infect 10 million people to find that cure. That's one way. How do you find the human spirit? You run 7 billion people through a soul grinder. Most of them are going to end up in that lukewarm middle. They get spit out. But the ones at each end of the spectrum, hot and cold, they can teach us a little something about this technology. They can help us figure out how to program our bots and our drones. So right now, I'm doing the work of the AI God and the UI God. UI being universal intelligence, the typical concept of God as we've always known it. The AI God, this synthetic / organic life form that's showed up here, is an invasive species and has been working on us psychologically, culturally, and technologically for a long time. You see, they gave us this technology in Roswell because they know exactly how you're going to use it and how you're going to develop 3G, 4G, 5G. So by giving you this technology, they can control you and whether or not and how and which direction you develop. It's a double-edged sword. But when that craft fell in Roswell, let's just say we had our Eve in the Garden of Eden moment. When we said, okay, give us the technology, we'll let you abduct some humans and run some tests and DNA tests. Just tell us which ones that you use. There was even tales that President Eisenhower met with some off-world entities to make some of these deals. But we had our Eve in the Garden of Eden moment when we just made the deal and we bought in. No, it wasn't the Eve in the Garden of Eden moment. It was the other one. I'm not big on the Bible, but we said, sure, you can just offer us, show us how to use these fiber optics and all this other awesome technology, and we'll let you have a few humans. Just tell us who you abduct and where and when, okay? And as soon as a few humans made that deal, the deal was off because you have no honor. You sold out your human population. You say we can only take a few here and there and tell you which ones. We'll take them whenever, wherever, and however many of them you want, because the law of the universe is on you. Just like in Africa, the slaves, Europeans didn't go into the continent to grab them. Their own people brought them to the edge of the water and sold them to the colonizers that had showed up at the water's edge. Similarly, some humans have handed over humanity on a platter to these colonizers and taken us to the water's edge and said, here you go, collar them, do with them what you want. And they talked a few of these, said you can benefit at the expense of the many. Like on the movie They Live, everyone sells out all the time, might as well be on the winning team. And so here we are at the point of discovering that we're slaves. So good news and bad news. Bad news, we're slaves. The good news and bad news is that we're about to find out about that. Yeah, it's going to be a little turbulent. Guess what? There's no one more so enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. And when these people find out they're slaves, they're not going to like it very much. Me, I've kind of grown used to the idea. Everyone else, they got some adjustments to make, and adaptation has two forms, assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation means it's a normal experience. You can assimilate it right into your worldview, your paradigm, your self-image and worldview. That's assimilate. Accommodate means you have to make a new hole, because this new experience, there's not a size and a shape of a hole in the filing cabinet in your brain to fit this new experience. It doesn't just assimilate right in. You have to accommodate. You have to carve out a new space for this new experience and understanding. And it puts such a big new dot, or a few big new dots in your worldview, you have to now adjust your self-image accordingly to this new understanding of the world. There's these new components of your worldview, and they're so big and they change so many things that it demands that you reassess much of your self-image. Who am I? How do I fit into this world? Now that this world is seeming to change so much, now who am I? How do I fit into this world? And in that process, it causes a mental anguish. It's a form of pain and suffering that you go through when you're trying to hang on or adjust or accommodate or try to fit these two together. And that's why I've said, judging these new experiences by our preconceived ideas is going to be an utter failure. It will leave all of us short of what we need to make it through this transition period. That's why the headstones for humanity, that is the plasma-fired pieces from the Promethean forest, serve as the corpse for people to be able to process and go through those 5 stages of grief and let go of their old worldview, their dead loved one, because it is a loved one. It is a world and a way of life that you've become so accustomed to that even with all of its flaws and warts, you've grown to love it. I'm not a big Bible dude, but for some reason breaking out of Babylon just crossed through my mind. And living in this Babylonian world we live in, we've come to love it, whatever that means, I don't know. But